It's wonderful to see such a large group of you here today. I think this is the biggest group we've had to date. So just before I start, I'd like to have a sense of who you are. And I'm not going to be able to chat to you all individually, but I would like you, by a show of hands, just to indicate how many of you are master's students. Hands up. Quite a lot. And then how many of you are PhD candidates? Okay, so that's helpful to know. There's one more thing I'd like to know. We are aware that a lot of our students, our postgraduates, are part-time. And so could you, by a show of hands, just put up your hand if you are a full-time student? Okay, well, that makes sense, given that it's the middle of the working day. How many of you are part-time students? Okay, so I see quite a few of you have made a plan to be here, which is wonderful. But for those of you who are part-time and don't have the luxury of being able to come to the university generally during the week, I'll be explaining to you what we have available online so that you can access the opportunities that are available face-to-face. So that slide shows our seminar room where we do most of our workshops. And this is the beautiful Akanya building where we are housed that Prof. Mutala spoke about. If you don't know where it is, you walk across the A parking lot towards what the B5 building, which is behind that. And on the way, you will encounter our building. So now you know where to find us. How many of you have actually been to the postgraduate school? Okay, that's good to know. So, what is it that we do? The plan is that we address student development holistically. We actually base our whole researcher development program on an internationally recognized framework, which is called the Researcher Development Framework. And that means that we work in a whole lot of different categories. So obviously research design and methodology, there's a big focus on research writing because thinking and writing go together. I'll speak more about that. Research strategy and governance. So for example, we run workshops on ethics because one of the biggest hurdles that you'll have to get through, most of you, is to take your research through an ethics approval process. And then a growing field is research communication and dissemination, and I'll talk about that a bit more just now. And then, as I said, we believe that you're here not just to develop as academics, not just to write a thesis or dissertation, but that you are on a journey to become a particular kind of person, the kind of person that employers, whether they be in the university or out of it, are looking for. They're looking for particular professional and personal qualities, and we have aspects of our program which we believe help you to develop in those ways. And then lastly, we do work, and not but least, we work together with our partners, particularly the library, your co-hosts today, on issues like information literacy, so searching the databases, RefWorks, Mendeley, and issues around academic integrity. I'm sure you must be aware that plagiarism is a really serious issue. In the university, you'd think it shouldn't be. And in the postgraduate realm, and you'd think by postgraduate level, people would know how to acknowledge sources. But it turns out to be a problem again and again and again. And so you will be aware of the software that's available to help you learn how to acknowledge sources appropriately. That's Turnitin. And obviously, there's a way of thinking about communicating your research, which helps you to use your sources appropriately and to acknowledge them. And in all of the training that we organize, we're mindful that you develop and understand how to avoid this dreadful thing called plagiarism. So, in terms of quantitative research, I'm not going to say very much because our next speaker is Dr. Richard Devey, who is the head of StatCon and who offers the suite of workshops that we run from the postgrad school. He and his colleagues offer workshops on all the topics you can see on the slide there. So moving on to qualitative research, those of you who are doing qualitative research will know that it's an immensely broad approach to research, and the topics you see listed there are only a few of them that are offered in our workshop this semester. We actually this year for the first time have employed someone to work with us on Mondays. She does a workshop. She's a professor she's actually from psychiatric nursing, but she has a long career in publishing qualitative studies, and she's running the workshop. She's also doing consultations. So if you're doing qualitative research and you would like to consult with her about your choices, you can make an appointment to meet with her. But here there's one really important caveat, and that is I wouldn't meet with anybody to talk about my research design and methodology without my supervisor's blessing. And ideally, and some of you are laughing and we know why, ideally, even in a perfect world, your supervisor would actually accompany you to such a consultation, because your supervisor is obviously your first guide. Then I just want to mention Atlas TI is a data management program that helps a lot if you're doing qualitative research. And we've done quite a lot of training on Atlas TI because it's part, we are part of the fourth industrial revolution, and the days of having lots of little notes and folders and scraps of paper with all your research ideas on are long gone by. And we can use programs to help us manage our data. Atlas TI can also be used for managing your literature. So even if you're not doing a qualitative study, you can use Atlas TI to manage and keep your literature. So come to one of our workshops. Then research writing is very dear to my heart. My own PhD is in educational linguistics, and my research was on argumentation in development studies discourse. So I know how important writing is for your research. And people who talk about writing up once they've done the research are perhaps under a misapprehension. If you're not writing from the very first day that you start off on your research, you're not doing yourself justice at all, because it's only when we write down what we're thinking that we actually know what we think. And that is how we push ourselves to deeper levels of understanding and how we have the best research ideas. So there are a whole suite of workshops that we offer. We also run writing retreats. We try to do at least 2 a semester. So there's one coming up in March, April. These are 3-day writing retreats at the Postgraduate School, and there are writing consultants to work with you. So if you're one of those people who doesn't seem to be able to get enough attention from your supervisor to read your writing, because we all know that they're so busy, this is a wonderful opportunity to have somebody who is experienced, who's used to looking at research writing, to look at your writing and to help you become a better research writer. We also feed you, by the way, which is very nice. So all you have to do is come along and write all day with no interruptions. And the other really important thing is research writing can be so lonely, as you know. And so take the opportunities to come together and be in community with other peers who are doing the same thing, which is why I'm inviting you to sit tight and write. For those of you who are full-time, come on Tuesday, starting on the 10th of March. Again, it's in the morning. We'll feed you, bring along your writing. There'll be a writing consultant. Please make use of these opportunities. What postgraduates tell us that they enjoy sometimes most about what we do is that we bring people together. People enjoy meeting other postgraduates. It's wonderful to see that other people are going through exactly what you are. It's good to make friends, and to make friends outside of your discipline, outside of your lab. We also have research writing consultations. All you need to do is make an appointment, and then you have nearly an hour, if you're a PhD candidate, with somebody who will have looked at your writing ahead of time. So I'll give details about that just now. In terms of research communication and dissemination, the university is no longer an ivory tower. Okay, so what we do matters not just to our supervisor, not just to the department, but it actually matters to the taxpayers who are funding our studies, who are funding this whole public university. And so this understanding is led around the world, universities to focus much more on getting postgraduates to be able to explain their research to lay people, people who don't actually know, maybe who've never even been to university. And so we run 2 competitions from the Postgraduate School, which will teach you to communicate your research very simply, effectively, even to people who are not in your discipline. The first is only for PhD candidates, the 3-minute thesis competition. It's an international competition, and it's really interesting. So imagine at the end of your PhD, towards the end of your PhD, you stand up for 3 minutes. You have one static PowerPoint slide, and you communicate to the audience what you have discovered, what you have made, the new knowledge that you are bringing into the world. I do suggest that you Google 3MT and you look at some examples of it. Here are our winners from last year's competition. Martin Becker from the Faculty of Humanities won, and Petunia Mashile from the Faculty of Science was the runner-up in the People's Choice Award. They went on to become joint first and second place in the national 3-minute thesis competition. So UJ is doing really well in this area, and we'd like it to stay that way, and we'd love you, if you're towards the end of your PhD, to become a competitor in this very exciting competition. If you go on the Postgrad School website now, or maybe later, you can actually see Martin Becker's presentation. Then there's the Visualize Your Thesis competition, which is for both master's candidates and master's students and PhD candidates. And this is slightly different. This is particularly for those of you who might be more shy, not so happy to stand up and speak to a big audience, because all you have to do is you're given a PowerPoint presentation. It's an interactive template, and you put your details in. It's a 1-minute presentation, and in that 1 minute, you convey your research to the audience. So these were the winners of last year's competition at UJ with the judges. And then lastly, and maybe this is more appropriate to you if you're starting off, we have a conference every year. It's at the School of Tourism and Hospitality, so it's quite a grand affair as these things go, and you are invited to talk about your research as if you were in a conference. So it's very good training for attending a conference in your field. But what's really interesting about this is it's interdisciplinary, because all postgraduates from UJ are invited to present. You can either do a poster or you can do a 15-minute PowerPoint presentation. And then what we're most proud about is that we give you constructive feedback. So when you go to an international conference or even a local one, you might find that people are out to see what you did wrong, and are very quick to point out how you have made a mistake or how you're on the wrong track. It can be a very, what can I say? It can be quite distressing if you haven't been to a conference before and you see how critical people can be. So I invite you to come along to our own conference and get feedback, not on the content, because obviously your supervisors and your department do that, but on your presentation skills and on your PowerPoint slides. And of course, it's a wonderful opportunity again to meet other postgraduates. Okay, then, we are aware that there is a lot of support out there on the internet, but not all of it is entirely useful. And you might sometimes feel overwhelmed by what you find if you Google something like argument in the thesis or whatever on the internet. So I'm suggesting you look at this site, postgradenvironments.com. It has really interesting information on each stage of the postgraduate journey that you can see there, starting off from before you even do your proposal until at the very end and you're graduating and looking towards a career. And these are just some screenshots from that site. So I suggest that you go online and you have a look at that. If you are looking for a particular topic, just do a search and you'll find lots of very helpful information. This is a site put together by overseas and local universities. So it's relevant for us in our own unique African context. So lastly, for those of you particularly who are part-time, we are aware, as I said, you can't make all the workshops, and we're trying to put onto Blackboard everything that we do in the face-to-face workshops and interactions. So you are all joined to this Blackboard community, and we use it to post announcements, share information and resources. There's a link to the writing consultation booking, and more and more we're putting up material from the face-to-face workshops. So this is what it looks like. And if you look at the left-hand column as such, you'll see that is where you look for whatever you want to find. So there are already over 5,000 of you on this Blackboard community. How many of you were aware that you're on this community? Okay, good. I'm glad to see that. So if you're not, what you need to do is you go to ULink, you click on Blackboard, and from Blackboard you've got to click on organizations, and then look for the Research Capacity Development Community. And on that, you'll find everything else. And then lastly, these are our contact details. I particularly would like to introduce you to one person who's somewhere here, that's Leonie Michaels, because she has the special role of being the Postgraduate Student Experience Coordinator. She's the one who works with master students and PhD candidates and organizes the whole program available for you. Leonie? She must have stepped out. Okay, well, there's her email address, and you'll definitely see Leonie if you attend any of our workshops. You'll see that the email address for booking writing consultations is there too. So that's it from me. I'd just like to wish you all the very best on your postgraduate journey.